All right, well, welcome back. Now we're going to cover Part MLS rules and regulations and clear cooperation. Right, so the first things that we want to talk about are the citations and the levels and fines. So Part MLS has three categories of citations. I did add a fourth category called the three UGs. You will not be able to find those, at least not grouped together in the Part MLS rules. They're kind of scattered throughout because they are more national rules or vendor-related rules that we have to enforce. So Part MLS does have minor violations, prohibited activities, major violations, and of course the three UGs that you will not be able to find. But let's talk about what the citation process is first. Right. All right, let's talk about the citation process. Agents have 2 business days to enter a listing into the MLS after all necessary signatures of the seller have been obtained for the listing that is located in Escambia or Santa Rosa County. So you have 2 days basically. If the house is in Escambia or Santa Rosa County, you have your listing agreement that takes effect. You have 2 days to put it into the system. There are ways around that. The withheld form is one of those, and we'll talk a little bit later about that. But for now, you have 2 days. Just remember that. If you have a listing that's outside, let's say you have a listing that's in Okaloosa County, you are not required to put it into the Part MLS in 2 days. You're not even required to put it into Part. Of course, you would want to, because why would you want to pay at another association when you can get it done free here to get syndication? Section 7, we talked a little bit about this earlier in the previous video. Section 7 states that email is the official method of communication for the MLS. So make sure that you, again, check your spam folder and that any notification from the MLS is not going into spam. Pensacola Association of Realtors has a third-party program called iCheck that checks for accuracy of our data. I wish I had a staff that was large enough to be able to do it without this third-party vendor, but unfortunately, we do not have that. And this third-party vendor basically checks at midnight. It goes through and combs the entire MLS to look for any possible violations. Our priority is not only to our clients and our members, but it's also to protect the data. Imagine you doing a CMA and you're pulling up comps and your comps had incorrect data. That will mess with your information, and that could take away value from your listing. Our first citation level is citation of a minor violation. Usually with these, you get a warning first with no financial penalties. You get 2 days to correct it, and then if it's corrected, you're fine. If it's not corrected, then we go into the fine process of the finances. The majority of our fines are minor violations, and once they're reported, they're corrected within an hour. These are things that are not intended and not malicious or anything like that. They are honest human mistakes, and they're corrected pretty quickly. Citation of a prohibited activity that is an uncorrectable violation that carries a preset automatic fine. So prohibited activities do have an automatic financial penalty assigned to them. A citation of a major violation is correctable in some parts. Some are not correctable, but the majority are. Yet is severe, so therefore it carries an automatic financial penalty as well. Those are some that are maybe not as accidental as the minor violations. There might have been some intent behind these violations. Of course, Section 9.9 of the Part MLS rules provide members the ability to request a hearing and the required criteria that you can contest a violation with. So it's all listed in there on the steps that you can do. So if you got a violation like, nope, that's not the way it should have been, it should have been done differently, you do have the option under 9.9 to be able to take care of that. So let's move on to discuss our minor violations. When we go to these minor violations, understand they're not all listed, there are several. So you will see some that have a little bit of a difference, like you might start with C and then C and M instead of an A, B, C. So section 9.2, and we're going to start off with the letter C. Failure to map a listing in the correct location. When you are entering a listing in the Part MLS, there is a map verification section that it wants you to do. You click on that to verify the location. I can't tell you how many houses I've seen in the middle of Escambia Bay for sale. Do not trust Google. Click on that, and if you see that that little red balloon is not where it's supposed to be, you're able to pick up that balloon, move it to the proper location, and save it. Validate your map. All right, letter F, failure to correctly report all required fields on a listing. So if you have a listing, and let's say that you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and that's what you put it in there as. And in reality, it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. You overlooked a bedroom. Okay, that is not entering information correctly into the MLS. If you have a listing and you put on the seller name in file or on file, that is not a correct information. Unless those members are part of a protected class, you must put their actual names on there. Failure to provide the Part MLS documentation requested within 2 days. So if Part MLS is investigating a possible violation and we ask you, hey, we need to see your listing agreement, or hey, we need to see whatever documentation we request, you have 2 business days to provide it to us. If you don't, then you're impeding the investigation and you can get hit with an additional fine. And I say additional fine because not only are you going to get hit with your original fine if it's found that that is accurate and there was wrongdoing, but then the fact that you delayed the investigation. Because again, our job is to protect the data. Failure to upload at least one photo that accurately depicts the property on every listing within 10 business days, except listings that are in a coming soon status. So if you're in a coming soon status, no photos are required until you go active, then that 10-day window starts. If you got an active listing and you put it in there, you have to have a photo that depicts the property within 10 business days. Otherwise, you can get hit with a fine. So you just want to make sure a snapshot of the house, whatever it is, the front. You're not required to put any other photos in there. I mean, the more photos you have, the better it sells, but you're not required to put any other photos in there. You must have at least one, though. Okay, uploading a photo, a virtual tour, or other media that depicts marketing, promotional messages made on behalf of the listing broker, the seller, or a third-party company. So when you upload a photo or a virtual tour, make sure there is no branding on any of it, no brokerages information. If you have one of those virtual tours that they do the 3D models and you go from square to square to square or circle to circle to circle, you can't put that ABC video created that 3D model for you to follow through. Because we discovered about 1.5 years ago that ABC Video is also ABC Realty. So you cannot put that together. No marketing, no branding whatsoever that depicts any promotional messages or anything. We're going to continue on here. Uploading a photo, virtual tour, or other media that violates copyright. If you go on Google and find a picture, you are violating copyright. If you have a listing, let's say that listing sold 5 years ago under a different agent, and now you have the listing because that member's transitioning out. Let's say they're a service member or whatever. And you're like, well, gee, those photos they had 5 years ago look good. They still work. Can I just use those photos instead of taking my own pictures? You can reach out to that agent and ask them, can I use your photos? If they say yes, it is still your responsibility to make sure they have the copyright. If you go to a wedding and you hire a photographer, that photographer, even though you're buying your picture packet, that photographer owns the copyright to those photos unless you arranged it that you can purchase those rights as well. So just because an agent tells you, hey, you can use the photos I had 5 years ago, that does not guarantee that that agent owns the photos. So you got to make sure if you're using someone else's photos that you're not violating copyright. Uploading a photo that contains people or persons. The MLS does not allow people, or persons meaning people in character, like the Grinch or dinosaur or Santa Claus or something like that, to be in photographs. If you're taking photos, just make sure you turn those things around so they're not in the photo. When a participant other than the listing broker places a for sale sign on the property, that does not mean your sign guy. What this is telling you is if ABC Brokerage has a listing agreement for property A, and then CBS Brokerage comes through and says, oh, we're going to put a for sale sign on property A. They don't have a listing agreement, so it means they cannot put a for sale sign on that property. At the same time, CBS Brokerage can't go to and put a sold sign on ABC Realty's property to say, hey, no, that listing's sold. I mean, I'm not sure what was going on back in the day, but this is some pretty cutthroat stuff that they were doing. But there are rules. You can't touch that. The preset fines for minor violations, it's a $100 fine. It's assessed if no correction is made during the warning period. Remember, minor violations give you a warning. So you get a notice. You have 2 business days to correct it. If you don't correct it in 2 business days, you're going to get hit with a $100 fine. At that point, it initiates section 9.3 and 9.7 of the Part MLS rules. On 20 days, you're going to get hit with a late fee if it's not corrected, or if the fee is not paid, the fine's not paid. And at the end of another 10 days, you will be disconnected from the MLS. Of course, the exception goes to the photographs. You can email us with documentation that the owner doesn't want to put photos yet. So you can send that to documents@PensacolaRealtors.org, and that will get you out of the 10 days. You just have to communicate, and it has to be seller directed. All right, so now we got the Paparazzi Home Edition, virtual staging. Virtual staging is an awesome tool that you can use, but you have to use it correctly. So when you have a virtually staged photo, you must disclose that information. I mean, not only is it ethical to do it, but it avoids the shock and awe when a member walks in and saw a photo of a perfectly clean room and walks into a bunch of boxes and storage items. So the virtually staged image must have in a clear and reasonable size font on the image the phrase virtually staged. The phrase virtually staged is also required in the photo label field in the add edit picture section of the input maintenance field. So when you're adding the picture, on the picture itself, it must say virtually staged. And then in the description field, it must say it's virtually staged. So it's given the 2 options. When they hover over it, they can see it. That is virtually staged. You are giving disclosure that the room that you see that's all nice and clean may not be that way when you walk into the house. And that's where it falls on the job of the agents or brokers to educate their client. Items that are permitted to be virtually staged include any kind of personal property. If you have old furniture from the 1970s, you want to remove that furniture and put modern furniture in there, you can do that. If you want to bring in plants, you can do that. You can do that for interior furniture. You can do it for exterior furniture as well. If you have a nice deck out there, you can put a barbecue pit on there. As long as it's not permanent barbecue pit, you can definitely do that. Replace artwork, replace plants, whatever you need to do. That stuff is permitted for virtual staging. Things that are not permitted for virtual staging is you cannot add or remove walls. No open concepts for a Victorian home. You cannot change flooring. You cannot change cabinets. You can't convert a peninsula to an island. You can't change countertops. You cannot change anything outside of the home that changes the property. For example, if I have a listing in Pace, Florida, I can't put the Gulf of Mexico and Pensacola Beach in my backyard. You cannot cover any kind of holes that are on the wall. You can't repair any damage to the floor or anywhere else in the house through virtually staging. You cannot add branding to any virtual stage. So for example, ABC Brokerage, you can't add a poster that says ABC Brokerage on the wall and say, oh, that was already there. You can't do that. You can also not modify the size of the virtual furniture that you're putting in to make the room look bigger. So if you have a room that's 10 by 6, you can't shrink a billiard table. You can't shrink 3 ping pong tables. You can't shrink a full couch with a 72-inch TV on the wall in an entertainment center to fit in that small room because you shrunk the size of the furniture. And again, the use of people or persons in any photo is prohibited. Right? The next section we're going to cover are prohibited activities. You'll find prohibited activities in section 9.4. And the first one we're going to cover is failure to enter a listing into the MLS after 2 business days. That is one of the biggest things that we get. For some reason, members just aren't able to get in there within 2 business days of having that listing agreement signed and taking effect. You have 2 days to do it. Failure to report a closed or sold listing within 5 days. So once you sell a listing, you got 5 days to report it to the system that it's closed. If you do it on the 6th day, you can't correct it. So that's why prohibited activities are hard or impossible to correct. You don't control a time machine that can go back and fix it for you. If a listing agent submits an offer to a seller while under a coming soon status. So under coming soon, no business like that's supposed to take place. So if you as a listing agent receive an offer and you submit it to your seller, you're going to get hit with a fine because you can't undo that. They can't unsee what they've seen. The preset fines for a prohibited activity is an automatic $200 fine with an additional $100 fee if the same agent violates the same prohibited activity within 365 days. So let me put that in layman's terms. So let's say that I don't put a listing in within 2 business days into the MLS. My first fine is going to come in, it's going to be $200. A week and a half later, I get a second one listing that I put in more than 2 days. That next fine is now $300. 2 months later, I do it again. Now that is a $400 fine, and it's going to continue going up until you hit the 365th day of the initial violation. Then the clock resets. The idea is to get it through you to understand that you must follow these rules. And of course, section 9.7 is initiated if the fines are not paid. And that can lead you into a world of trouble and lost access of the MLS. All right, something else to think about. Section 1.2.3, market date versus list date. This seems to have a lot of members confused. So I'm just going to give you the layman's term for it. So you can read the information that you have here and it gives you the legal description and all that, but it's really, really simple. Market date is the date that your listing is ready to go onto the PAR MLS market. Market date going on the market. So the date that your listing is ready to go active, ready to go into coming soon, or whatever date that you're putting it into the MLS, that is your market date. That's why if you're putting in a partial listing, I tell you to make sure the market date is the last thing you fill out, because you can start entering a partial listing, let's say on Monday, and you put that date on there, right? The date of today, because market date can't be in the future. So the system will only let you put in that date. And then you fill everything out, and then you click on Friday to go active, you're already getting fined. Because from Monday to Friday is more than 2 days, and the system's going to hit you on that. So always make sure your market date is the last thing you fill out. The list date. The list date is the date of your listing agreement. List date, listing agreement. So you can have all the signatures done on Monday, but if your listing agreement doesn't take effect until Friday, you don't have any authority to do any kind of marketing or anything with that listing until that listing agreement takes place. Now, the majority of the time, the listing agreement happens right then and you're good to go. But there could be times where like, hey, I'm going to enter this listing agreement with you on Friday, but I'm going on vacation and we fly out on Monday, so I need to sign it on Monday so that you have it by Friday because I won't have any cell phone service or anything. So they could have that opportunity where you have the signatures done before your listing agreement begins. But just know that your list date is the date of your listing agreement. Your market date is the date that your listing is rated to go active, coming soon, or whatever status in the par MLS market. Market date is the date that it goes to the market. List date is the date that it goes, that your listing agreement has signed, or not, that your listing agreement takes effect. I repeat myself that multiple times because these two items cause constant violations. And what we want you to do is not to have to worry about those violations. But when it comes to your market date and your list date, don't panic. There are options. There are seller directs that you can do to help avoid some time or buy you some time. And of course, you have the coming soon, which gives you more time as well. And we'll discuss those later on. Let's move on to your major violations. They are found in section 9.5. A listing in a coming soon status is shown. If you have a listing in a coming soon status and you show it, that is a major violation. You cannot show it in a coming soon status. A selling or buyer's agent submits an offer to a listing agent while the property is in a coming soon status. So our policy is that you can't do any kind of contract negotiation, showings, or anything with the coming soon status. So now you have the buyer's agent submitting an offer to the listing agent. That triggers a fine for the buyer's agent. This is a relatively new rule. It used to be squarely on the shoulders of the listing agent, but that was seen as unfair, especially when the market was extremely hot. So we decided to spread it out so the buyers know that they're not allowed to submit an offer. Failure to conduct a showing through the listing broker. You must conduct all showings through the listing broker. Follow the instructions that are on the listing. Your preset fines for major violations is an automatic $300 fine with additional $100 if not corrected in 2 business days. If it's not corrected in 2 business days, then section 9.6 and 9.7 are initiated. So you'll get a late fee at the end of 20 days and then lose MLS access in 10 days. All right, let's move on to coming soon. Let's clear some of the confusion. Coming soon is an awesome tool. It allows you to do a lot of stuff for your property. But you have to be careful with coming soon. So you got to make sure you dot every I and cross every T. So let's get started with what's required for a coming soon listing. First, obviously, you have to have a listing agreement. You also have to have a coming soon addendum signed, and it must be uploaded to the MLS. Listings in a coming soon status cannot be shown. If a listing agent is aware that the listing has been shown, the listing agent must be placed on active status immediately. So that rule there covers the situation where you are listing a coming soon and you're doing everything correctly, and you get a phone call from your client that says, hey, John Doe's a realtor and he saw my coming soon listing and he asked if we have a couple look at the house. And I said, sure, come on in. The house has now been shown. So what you would need to do is make it active immediately, and then you would need to report the people that came in. Listing agents cannot accept offers while the listing is in a coming soon status. Nor can a buyer agent provide an offer. The benefits for a coming soon listing. Coming soon listings are not syndicated out to the public. However, coming soon listings are able to be searched, and they are syndicated to Paragon's Collaboration Center. So if you had a contact set up and they got a criteria that they're looking for, let's say it's a condo in Pensacola Beach, and you have that information going to them automatically through the Collab Center, and then suddenly a coming soon listing pops up, they will get that coming soon listing. So they'll know there's a house coming on the market or a condo that fits their criteria that they're looking for. Also, the days on the market that do accrue while in a coming soon status. So you can be in a coming soon status for 6 months, 6 years, however you want it. Part doesn't end it, but it still builds days on market. When that coming soon listing goes active, those days go away. And you start off with day 0 for coming soon. All right, let's talk about reporting violations. With the coming soons that you have to report them because they're not automatic. Let's go ahead and talk about that. If you have a listing, you will see right here where it shows the correction button highlighted on this particular house. That's supposed to be in Pace, Florida. Obviously, I got the Gulf of Mexico behind there. You will click that correction button and it'll open up this little email that you have here on the right-hand side. Even though this states that you must add as much information as possible, it's also, we've added that to the rules as well to enforce it. Because I can't tell you the number of times that we just get a blank email. We know that, okay, this particular listing has an issue, but we have to spend time finding out what the issue is. Unfortunately, the staff doesn't have time to go in there and say, okay, let's look at this listing. Okay, this says 3 bedrooms. Does the county say 3 bedrooms? Does this say this? Does this say that? So if you tell us as much information as possible, we'll be able to address it quickly and correct the issue. When you report a listing, you are anonymous. The person that owns the listing will never know it's you. So I highly recommend that if you have an issue like this, I know some people we're human and we're all good natured and we want to say, hey, you know, John, I just want to let you know your listing actually has 3 bedrooms, not 4. And then you and John get into an argument about number of bedrooms. And next thing you know, you're like, oh, fine, if you're not going to correct it, I'm just going to do what I need to do. Then you report it. John's going to know it was you because you guys just finished having an argument. So try not to be the nice guy. If you're going to do a correction, do it through the system. Remain anonymous. That way there's no issues that come up in the future. All right, now we're going to talk about the 3 UGs. These are the rules that are spread out throughout the handout or the Part MLS rules and regulations that are not in a section. They are throughout the rule book. And let's talk about those. The first one is the no loan of a key. Unauthorized access to the system, your agent reports. So let's talk about these 3 guys here. Case number 1, Dwayne Sneakerson and Ryan Takesy, accused of sharing a Supra key. So, section 7.4.4, no loaning of the key. A key holder shall not loan their key physically or digitally to any person. What that means is, go back to the scenario when we're talking about Supra on the home screen. If you don't get your phone set up because your appointment hasn't come up and you ask another agent, hey, do you mind unlocking it? If that agent goes, yeah, I'll unlock it for you, then I got to go. Okay, they are loaning out their key. If that agent gives you your phone or their phone and says, here, go unlock it and just give it back to me when you're done, that is loaning a key. So you cannot do that. A key holder must be physically present during the entire showing. Again, if someone lets you into the house because your key is not working for whatever reason, that person must stay on the property during the entire showing. The key holder shall not open any key for an unaccompanied person. So if someone's coming in, hey, do you mind if we look at this house? And you just go beep, beep, and you're done. That will not work. That will be a violation as well. Your first offense for this is $100. Your second offense is $500, and your third is $1,000 and possible loss of a key. Important notes, showing instructions are available. Make sure you follow the showing instructions. The presence of a Supra key or Supra lockbox is not an open invitation. Let me give you a personal story that came along with this. When I was selling my house in Pensacola, we had a dog. My oldest son had a dog there. It was a Lab Shepherd mix. And my other younger son lived there as well, of course. I was at work. My older son went to work. My youngest son let the dog out before going to school, forgot to bring the dog in. So the dog was outside. My youngest son went to school. a phone call maybe 2-3 hours later from my alarm company that my alarm's going off. I get a phone call from my agent that's panicking because the buying agent, they wanted to come in and measure curtains and they just let themselves in without following instructions. My house had an alarm. It went off. If that dog would have been in the house, they would have been bit. So remember, just because the super lockbox is there doesn't mean you have an open invitation. All right, let's proceed on to the next one. Password sharing, Brenda Money. Do not give access to the system. So if I log in to a computer and say, hey, would you mind finishing putting this in for me? And I'll walk away, I just gave you access. If I go to your computer and I log in for myself and ask you to do something, I'm giving you access. That's unauthorized access. Your first fine is $1,000. Your second fine is $2,500, and your third fine is $5,000. So the ways to get around this, again, is use your assistant forms and have the assistant assume identity. The system is able to track who's logging in where. If you're 50 miles apart and you log in within 5 minutes of each other, someone's sharing passwords. It will track it and it will let us know. All right, the next one is your confidential leak. Jane Doe, section 9.8, agent reports. So agent reports used to be extremely confidential because it had the commission rate on there. Well, now with PAR's new rule, commission rates are available to the public. However, there's still information in there that the public does not need to have. The instructions of cooperating broker information, the agent notes themselves cannot be shared with the public. So if you made fun of the lady's cat, that won't be let out. So your first offense is a warning from the PAR MLS department. You get a letter saying, hey, don't do it again. Your second offense is $1,000, and your third offense is $5,000. That is if you're really not getting the hang of it. The only way agent reports can be sent to clients is if a member downloads it and emails it to them or prints it out and hands it to them. The system is not set up to allow you to email an agent report from the system directly to a client. If you want to get all the information to a client from a report, do the customer full report with documents. That gives them everything they're entitled to get. All right, so the next couple of sections we're going to cover quickly here: your MLS clear cooperation policy, your limited service, your broker exclusive, a little bit of the Gulf Coast CMLS, public documents, property description, and change of status. So let's get going with these guys. All right, your clear cooperation. The National Association of Realtors kicked around the idea in 2019 and implemented it, and it became mandatory to be in effect by May 1 of 2020. PAR implemented on April of 2020. Their cooperation only applies to existing residential properties. So it doesn't apply to commercial, it doesn't apply to land, it doesn't apply to brand new residential, only existing residential properties. If you have an agreement, whether it's a withheld agreement, a broker exclusive agreement, or anything, or you just haven't put it in the MLS, and you market that property, whether you market it on social media, in the newspaper, flyers, or any other method of marketing, you now have 1 day to get it in the system. That includes your yard sign. So the whole deal about having 2 days to get in the system, if you do it, you just lost an entire day. Make sure you don't market the property unless it's in the PAR MLS. That is a national rule that we have to enforce. So there are no automatic fines for clear cooperation policy. These policies are reported to us. And the way they're reported is via violations@pensacolarealtors.org. Again, this is a national policy that must be enforced. If you get a violation the first time, the broker is fined $500. the broker, trust me, will turn around and give you the bill. Broker will pay it, and then you have to reimburse the broker. The listing agent must attend MLS orientation in person within 60 days. You cannot do it online. And you are placed on a 6-month probationary period. That's if you make a violation. If you are a little thick-headed and you make a second violation of the same policy, clear cooperation, the broker is fined $3,000. The agent is suspended from the MLS for 30 days. That means you cannot do your job for 30 days. You cannot even become an assistant. Nothing has access with the MLS for 30 days. And then you will have to have, even though it's not listed on there, you will have to have MLS orientation as well. Now, if you're really thick-headed, like my 2 children are, and you happen to make the second violation while you're on probation of the first violation, the broker is still fined $3,000, but the listing agent is suspended for 90 days. So you just increase your suspension time. Now, if you continue again, and your third violation happens, the broker is fined $10,000, and the listing agent is suspended from the MLS for 6 months. Any other violations after the third remain at the same level. So for 6 months, you cannot do a job. So I'm not sure if the broker will keep you around. Most likely you will be terminated. This being a national policy, it can follow you around. So be very careful with this. How do you avoid this from happening? Communication. That is the key. Visit parwiki.com, Clear Cooperation, to find all the definitions, the facts, and information on how to report. Communicate with your agents, your office assistants, your sign vendors, your sellers. Definitely. If you got a seller that says, hey, I don't want it in the MLS, and you're like, okay, great, sign the agreement, you submit it to us, we got it, you're covered for that 2-day thing, it's waived. But then your seller puts it on Zillow or your seller puts it on Facebook, guess what? You, as the agent, is being hit with clear cooperation. So communicate, that's the key. Educate everybody involved so that we all understand what clear cooperation is. The reason for clear cooperation is to give you fairness across the board. There used to be a nasty little thing called a pocket listing, where a member would get a listing and not put it in the MLS. They would hold it out because they wanted to get both ends of the deal. So they weren't doing their clients any favors. So you weren't getting market value for the house. You may have a client that says, hey, I can give you $300,000 when the house is worth $400,000. But that way I get both ends of the deal. If I don't do that, I keep it as a pocket listing and my commission is going to be bigger, but your client is missing $100,000 that they could have made. So that's the reason clear cooperation was put into place, to protect the client. All right, your broker exclusive listings. So broker exclusive listings is a status that you can put in the Part MLS. Basically, a broker exclusive listing gives no marketing. You're not able to market. The only way you're able to market a broker exclusive listing is by email within your own office. So you got to go find all your buyers. You got to vet your buyers to make sure they can afford whatever property is. In the example that I like to use for broker exclusive, because it's not entered, it's in the MLS, but it's not visible to anybody, would be, let's say, George Lucas. If George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, was going to sell Skywalker Ranch for whatever trillions of dollars is worth, and if he did it as a regular listing, can you imagine the number of people that would be wanting to go see his house just so they can say they were there, with no actual interest on purchasing the house? So a client that wants a broker exclusive understands that they're not going to get fair market value, but they want the privacy. They don't want to deal with the mobs of people coming. They don't want showings every 15 minutes. They only want serious buyers. That's what a broker exclusive provides you. Again, there's no syndication with broker exclusive, and you cannot market it. Limited service agreement. Your limited service agreement is basically an easy way to make a little bit of money and not do a lot of work. However, it still holds a lot of responsibility. So basically, you have a client, and that client says, you know what? I want my house in the MLS, but I'm not going to pay a big commission rate. You guys are robbing me blind. I'm going to pay you a flat fee. This flat fee, let's say it's 300, 400 bucks. It's going to mean that you're going to get this listing. You're going to put it in this MLS for me. The client will take care of all showings. The client will take care of everything that deals with closing, all marketing, all that kind of stuff. All you're doing is putting it in the system. It syndicates from that system, obviously. And then when the client sells it, you're marking it sold. And that's it. That's your responsibility. However, you have some other things you got to keep in mind. When you do a limited service agreement, you as the member are still bound to that 2-day getting into the system from your listing agreement. Get it in 2 days. And then you're also required to mark it sold within 5 days. So I highly recommend, if you do a limited service, somewhere in your agreement, you have a paragraph that the seller has to initial that covers you in case you collect a fine. And an example that I can give you is, let's say you put it in the system, right? It's like, great, you let me know when you sold it. A week goes by, you haven't heard anything. 3 weeks go by, you haven't heard anything. At a month, you're like, okay, well, let me check what's going on with this listing. You call the member, he's not responding. You get a hold of him finally 4 days after that. And it's like, hey, I'm just trying to figure out what the status of the house is. Are you still on the market? Is it sold, or any update? Do you want to, do any changes to the listing? And the seller responds to you, oh, no, gee, I'm so sorry. I sold that house 3 weeks ago. Now you're well past the 5 days to market sold in the system. So you as the member are going to get fined. So you need to have something in your contract that says that you can then turn around and pursue that fine from the seller, that they can reimburse you for that fine because they failed to live up to their part of the contract and inform you. We as the part MLS cannot go to the seller and say, guess what? It is your fault. You owe us the money. We collect it from the member. And then this gives you the ability to then turn around and go to small claims court or whatever you need to do to try to sell that up. So just recommend that you have something like that in your documents to protect yourself. Okay, the Gulf Coast CMLS, again, the official commercial site for PAR MLS. As a PAR member, you do have access to a free or a free basic account or a pro paid account. The free basic account allows you to look into the Gulf Coast CMLS for commercial listings. It allows you to enter a listing into the Gulf Coast CMLS. And that's about it. A pro member account allows you to search, to put in a listing and get national syndication throughout the United States, and even syndication into Canada that goes through the commercial exchange. Commercial listings are a longer game. You may be sitting on a house that you're trying to sell on the residential side for maybe a month or a month and a half, depending on how the house is, how the market goes. Commercial listings may stay on the market for a year and a half. Difference is that when you close on that commercial listing, your commission rate on a bigger ticket price is a lot more than on a smaller house price. So it's a longer game, it's a different game, but it's one that's worth looking into. Florida has no requirements for an agent to go through any special commercial classes or anything. So if you got a real estate license, you can sell commercial and you can sell residential. However, your brokerage may have policies in place that they say, okay, you're residential, but if you want to go to commercial, you got to take Class A and Class B. That may be at the brokerage level, but the state of Florida has no regards in that matter. The Gulf Coast CMLS covers 2 states and 18 counties, so it covers Florida and Alabama and 18 counties within those. It's also made up of 6 associations. So you got Mobile Area Association of Realtors, Baldwin Realtors, Pensacola Association of Realtors, Navarre Area Association of Realtors, Emerald Coast Association of Realtors, and Central Panhandle Association of Realtors. They all make up the commercial field. So every commercial property from those sections are fed into the Gulf Coast CMLS. It is a regional commercial multiple listing service. So it has a lot of benefits. The fields that we used to have in Paragon never syndicated, never went anywhere, which is why the Gulf Coast became the official site. Public documents. So public documents that you can upload into the system are basically like if you have a coming soon addendum, or if you have a broker exclusive form, or any kind of documentation that's considered public, can have your logo, the brokerage logo on it, but it cannot contain any contact information. So no emails, no phone numbers, no website for the agent or the brokerage or anything like that. The logo, yes. Other than that, no. So if you're uploading a contract or a coming soon addendum on the letterhead of ABC Brokerage, that's okay as long as there's no contact information underneath that letterhead. Property description. So this is a field that gets a lot of people because up to recently, maybe a couple years ago, we didn't have the process to keep an eye on this field. Property description field syndicates to the public. And for the longest time, you had agent names being put on there, builder names, seller concessions being placed on there. For more photos, go to this site, all this information that was going out to the public. We've been able to incorporate this with the iCheck after the MLS committee decided that this field is being abused. So at that point, we added it to the iCheck list. It's our third-party vendor that checks for issues in the data. And now they are being popped up. So you may have a broker that says, no, we've always put that there. You can put it there. The rule is you cannot. The only thing that can go into the property description is something that describes the property. Cozy 2-bedroom underneath 3 palm trees. That works. You know, call me for more information. That doesn't work. The seller is going to put $10,000 for a new roof. That doesn't work. All that information go in the agent notes, and then it becomes the responsibility of the buyer's agent to explain that to their buyers. Changing status. So here in the Part MLS, once you change status, you have 24 hours to update the system. So if you have a house that is active and then you go under contract and it becomes contingent, but you're waiting on an inspection, you have 24 hours from the time that you sign that contract to make it contingent. If you have a house that's contingent and that inspection that you're waiting on is cleared and you're good to go, then you have 24 hours from that point to make it pending. Once it's pending, you have what you can put in the projected close date, all that kind of stuff. Once you're fine. There's no 24-hour period, but once you sell it, you got 5 days to market close. The Part MLS does not recognize first right of refusal or kickout clauses. So you can have that in your documentation. You can have that in your contract. If you go under contract with a contingency, then you must put it into a contingent status. Contingent statuses do syndicate out of the Part MLS, but they syndicate as contingent. And that lines up with National Association's policy of status changes. You have a contract, therefore you must change the status. And with that said, we are done with the rules and regulations, so that you have a couple questions to answer coming up to see how much you retain from this information. So wake up and get ready to answer. We'll catch you at the review.